So since it's the end of the year now and most of us are off for the holidays, I've had some free time and I've actually been watching a lot of my old projects. So I thought it'd be fun to pull up some stills and kind of go over the lighting setups that I've used.
Okay, so for this first still, this is from a spec commercial that I shot about 2 years ago, and this is the establishing wide. So I'm really only using one light to pretty much light this entire scene, and it is a 1200D. Pretend that is the light, and it is shining through the window. And I have it up about, I don't know, 10 or 15 feet away through the window. In order to get a really kind of realistic look of like sunlight shining through the window, you would typically want like a powerful fixture far away from it to help emulate sunlight the best. Luckily, this was a pretty cloudy day, so I could get a lot of punch from this 1200D, because if it was like really sunny outside, I would definitely need like a brighter fixture. That's why you see like these super powerful lights on these bigger film sets, because they really just need like the punch in order to create this look. And I really like the look that this one light is giving. It's just adding a lot of texture to the scene. As you can see here, like the hard light streaks on the hardwood floor. It's kind of bouncing off on this CD case here. And then it's hitting this glass, like this glass case on this cabinet. I think that looked really nice as well. And it's kind of just, it's just lightly hitting our subject here on the top of his head. And I'm actually getting a lot of bounce back onto his face from this little piece of white paper here. And that was intentional, because originally I had the light kind of just aiming at the floor, hoping it would get enough bounce back on his face, but it just wasn't doing enough as I wanted to. So we had him here drawing anyway, so the white piece of paper really just kind of helped with that. So I actually have about 3 other lights in this scene, but they're kind of just accent lights. They're actually behind these books here and this clock in these cabinets, and they're Aputure MCs. So these cabinets were just really dark and they were kind of falling into the shadows. And I just wanted to kind of show off more of the production design that we had going here, because we have some really nice things. We have like this nice wood paneling, and I just wanted to show that off. So I put some Aputure MCs behind these books to kind of just get them out of the darkness a little bit. And I also have I believe it was like a Titan tube, and I have it in front of this like old tube TV, as you can see. So Titan tube. Just because, again, this was falling off into the shadows, and I think it just adds a nice little foreground element. Since it's a tube TV, we're kind of going for like, the story of this, it's this young boy and he grows up through the ages. And so this time period is, I guess, supposed to be like 2000, so he would have a tube TV. So I just want to show that off, because, you know, we went through the trouble of putting it there in order to kind of enhance the production design and the story, and it was falling into the darkness a little too much. So just having that Titan tube to kind of like bring it out of the darkness too much, but it is really subtle, like you just see it just enough to know what it is. Pretty simple setup, mainly just using one light. I really think that like good cinematography a lot of the time is just good production design and just kind of picking the lighting and lenses that like enhancify that. The reason I think this still looks good is just because there's a lot of pleasant things to the eye. Like the hardwood here is a nice tone, kind of like his red shirt makes him stand out a little bit. This green pretend like racetrack thing pops out, it's interesting. And even just like the subtle thing like this little CD case and the way the light is just reflecting off it, it's just like, it's interesting, and it just makes like the frame stand out and be a lot less boring. And so the close-up here, we didn't really do much else. Obviously, as I said before, I have the 1200D, and it's doing the same thing. It's shining through the window. I think I may have adjusted it a bit to point it more towards the ground where our subject was, to just get a little more return on his face. And all we really did is we brought in a 6x6, I believe it was an Ultra Bounce. Sorry for my terrible writing. just to get a little more return on his face. And honestly, looking at this now, I think I'd like a little bit more kind of output on his face here. It just seems like it's kind of disappearing into the background a little bit. So, you know, I could have just maybe shone like a Titan tube and bounced it into the 6x6 instead of just relying on like the light that was already filling up the room. But I still think this is a nice frame. It looks really natural next to the wide. It cut together well, but yeah, looking back, I think a little more output on his face would have looked a lot more nice. Okay, so this next still here, it's from this same spec commercial. So the boy from before, now he's grown up a bit, and the wide of this is he's working on his bike in the garage, and I'll show you this still. It's a dolly in, and he's kind of a silhouette, and the background is just like a big open garage door. And so this is the close-up of this. We kind of dolly in as he's working on his bike. So in order to get this look, I used a 6x6 Ultra Bounce. Again, sorry for my terrible writing. A 6x6 Ultra Bounce, and I believe it was I think it was a 600D, because I don't think I needed the 1200D for this. So I'm just bouncing the 600D into the Ultra Bounce, and I get a really nice return on his face here. And as you can see, it's very like, there's not a lot of wrap going on. It's very like, it's almost one side illuminated and the other side is pretty contrasty. However, I kind of did this intentionally because the way in the wide he's facing the garage door, the light's really coming at him through one side fully. So it kind of made sense that like half of his face would be illuminated and the other side would be a lot more contrasty, because we established the wide without being any more lights inside the garage, and the only light is coming from the outside, the natural light here. So I like this look. I think it looks nice on his face. I don't know, maybe looking back, I could have had something in the background just to give him more of like a backlight here, because, you know, he's kind of falling into darkness here, but I don't mind it. I think it looks good, and I think it matches the wide that we established earlier well, so I'm happy with how this shot turned out. Okay, so this next still is from the same spec commercial, and now our character is a lot older, and he's working on this motorcycle in the garage. Yes, this is probably my favorite frame from the whole thing. So obviously what we did here is we have some Titan tubes, and we set those up as practical lights in the scene. And we have one here over the workbench as well. I'll talk more about that in the next close-up scene, because he does some drawings here in the workbench. But yeah, mainly how we're lighting this is the Titan tubes in the background is kind of lighting up our background here. So Titan tube. And at first I had it with just the Titan tubes on, and I like the look, but our subject was just like a little too dark for my liking, and especially for like a commercial look. So I just wanted to add a bit more fill. So again, I brought out the 6x6 Ultra Bounce. I'm just gonna write Ultra. And I have a 600D again, and I'm bouncing it into the 6x6 just to add some more fill onto his body and to the bike here, because he was kind of just a silhouette, and I wanted to see more of his face and the bike and like what was going on in our world. Yeah, so originally in pre-production, we decided that these practical lights were gonna be more of a tungsten-y look. But the day before, maybe even the day of, me and the director of this, my friend Kevin, we decided to go for more of like a blue cyan look, mainly because we knew the tool he would be using here to work on the bike was gonna create these like flying sparks. And we knew that would just really contrast nicely with more of like a blue look. And I really think like the sparks here really just make this image a whole lot better, because you can see here we're getting a lot of nice reflection of it on the bike, some reflection of it on the forearm here, and he even has like a bit of a catch light here, as you can see in the glasses that he's wearing. So I really think this like tied together this whole scene. So this still here, this is the next part of the scene. He's working on the workbench. He's doing some mock-ups of some drawings. And the way we lit this was, originally I wanted to put a Titan tube in this little work light fixture here, but the tube was too big. We tried to use some zip ties to get it in there, but it just wasn't working and it was taking up a lot of time. So luckily there were some shelves above this work light here. So we just used a Cardellini and then I put a Titan tube into that, and that's what's lighting this scene here, bouncing off the work desk and then onto his face. So that's a Titan tube. And as you can see here, this work light here, we kind of put it like on an angle. And we did that intentionally because the light was off, and this is kind of the light that's supposed to be the practical that's supposed to be lighting the scene. So we kind of had to tilt it to make sure you could tell it wasn't on, since we had to put a Titan tube above it to actually light it. And I think this is a really great look that maybe some people overlook sometimes, because it just creates a really natural feel, because the light's bouncing, and again, the white papers here do a really good job of getting a lot more return on his face. And yeah, I think it just really creates a nice natural look because it's bouncing off the workbench and the papers, and you just get a nice subtle bounce on his face. And I also have another Titan tube. I have another Titan tube here that I already established in the wide that there would be one here, but this is really helpful because it really just gets a nice backlight on his back and on the back of his head here. And it really helps separate him from the background, which I think is pretty necessary in this shot, because if I just had this light here, it's getting a bit of bounce on his face, but I think he would really get lost in the background if this backlight wasn't here. Okay, so this next still is from a music video that I shot about 3-4 years ago. And this is probably one of the most simple lighting setups that you could ever do. So this was a really tight bathroom, so a big lighting setup really wasn't gonna happen, but originally we tried to put in an auto pole, and I think we tried to clamp like an Aputure 300D to it, like with one of those light domes. And if you ever use those light domes, you know that they are huge and they take up a lot of space. And so obviously that wasn't working. You could see it in the frame, and so we had to pivot. So luckily in our package, we had a 750 Lyco, which is like an older tungsten spotlight. And a lot of days now, people will just use the Aputure spotlight mount, and it creates the exact same effect. So the 750 Lyco, I think was outside. I think it was outside of the room. And so that's the 750. And as you can see here, the great thing with the Lyco is that you can like push in these blades to make a really refined shape. So we made this nice kind of square here as to make it look like it's a window shining in. And we pointed it against this white wall, and that's how it's lighting our subject here. And you're getting just a really nice bounce on his face. And it's nice because the 750 is a tungsten balanced light, so it's kind of, you're getting a nice like warmer kind of sunlight feel, which is what we were originally going for. And we probably would have, if we tried to use the other setup with like the auto pole and the 300D, we would have had to use gels and all that, and this just really simplified it and made it look really nice. So luckily, since this was a music video, you know, it's pretty loose. You don't have to get like certain coverage like you do with narrative stuff. And this was pretty much, it was this and then a shot that was a little bit wider. But if we did a really wide shot, you would have saw that there's no window here, which is what this is supposed to be coming from. So luckily, since it was a tighter thing, we could get away with a setup like this. I use this technique all the time if I'm in a really tight space because it's just so effective, and especially if you're just bouncing it off a wall that's already in the space, even if it's not like white like this one, like you're just gonna get a really natural look because it's bouncing off like colors that are already in that environment. So I think this works really well. Luckily this wall was like really close to him too, so we're getting a nice wrap around his entire face here, and yeah, I think this turned out pretty good. So this is a still from a mini doc that I shot 2 years ago, and we shot it on 16mm. So outside this window here, luckily in this space there was a deck, so I was able to shine lights through the window. And I believe we had a 1200D, and I'm blasting that through the window here. And then again, I have like a 6x6, I think maybe it was an 8x8, but I'm not too sure. And I have an ultra bounce just to get some return and some fill here because it was creating a pretty like silhouette-y look, which is not what I was going for. And that's pretty much it, what's lighting for the wide. Again, this was a documentary, so I wanted to be as natural as possible. And I think this setup really just enhances what the space was already doing, because as you can see, it's really bright. He has a lot of windows in here. So really all I'm doing is just blasting in enough light so I can get enough output on my subject while still kind of exposing for the outside and the windows. But what I also have is I have a 300D with a spotlight mount. We'll pretend that's my little spotlight. I'll just call this one spotlight. And I'm getting a little slash of hard light here on his arm. And I think just like a little subtle detail like that just kind of like adds a lot more interest into the scene. And especially for this, where as you can see, like it's a bright daylight, it's a bright day, there's a lot of sunlight coming in. It just looks a little off to me when everything is really just like soft and diffused. I mean, obviously if that's what the project calls for, then that's fine. I think adding some bursts of hard light can really just make the scene look a lot more interesting. So again, this is the one of the tight insert shots from this project. And from what I was showing before, I'm doing the same thing where I have the spotlight and it's adding just a pop of hard light here. And this was about a tattoo artist, so we're revealing the tattoo now. And I think this just brings so much more interest into the shot. And you can see like the reflectiveness, because he puts that like water on, or I'm not sure what it is actually, like after you get a tattoo. And it just brings a lot more to this than if I didn't put any hard light in and it was just kind of this soft light over his arm. Okay, so this still is from another music video that I shot a few years back. And I think this is a good example of when people say light the space and not the face. So the first light, I have it behind this closed kind of frosted door. And I believe it's like, I think it's like a 600D. And I'm just blasting that almost full output through the door. And the reason I kind of have it on full output is because I think I had it about like halfway, but I just wasn't really getting that like refined silhouette, which is what I was going for this kind of look. I just wanted him to kind of be a silhouette, like walking back and forth in this like mysterious looking loft. And then I'm doing the same thing here behind this frosted door. Yeah, that's either that's like a 300D, I believe. I don't have it on as high as an output as the 600D, just because I wanted this one here to kind of be the focus. And then back here in this kind of like kitchenette area, I think I just have a Titan tube. And I have that on like a cyan color, just to kind of create some color contrast from the main area here. And I think that was a nice look. And also kind of and then also to kind of seal it off, luckily the studio we're using, it already had these little fixtures here and they had smart bulbs in them. So I just changed the color temperature to the same kind of tungsten look that we were using. And I think these two lights here specifically really just like add some nice little details that really just tie an image together. So this is probably one of the more complicated setups than what I've been showing, but like if you really break it down, like it's quite simple. I think we set this up in like 20 minutes or something. Like, so this is a still from that same music video, and this scene might look a little complicated lighting wise at first glance, but it's pretty easy. So I think I only lit this with Titan tubes. We wanted the majority of the scene to be this like orange fiery look with like hints, with like pops of blue. So I believe what I did was I have like 2 Titan tubes kind of like clamped together, and I'm shooting it through like a 4x4 opal, and I kind of have that on this side here. So that's kind of just like filling the room. It's getting a nice look on his face, like the side of his shirt, the side of the couch. And then where this sheer is, and the window, I have a Titan tube clamped to the top of the window frame, and I have that on that same orange color because this was kind of falling into darkness. And I think that this really this light here really illuminates this nice sheer, and it just brings a lot of texture to the environment. And then for the pops of blue here, I have another Titan tube and I have that rigged above him. And then I just have, I believe I have a cutter or a 4x floppy just on the back of it. Sorry, I don't really know how I'm gonna draw this. So that's the 4x floppy, that's the Titan tube. And the reason I have that is so the blue isn't hitting the wall here. And you can tell it kind of is still because this little section here looks kind of magenta. But yeah, I kind of did my best with the tools that I have to make sure that the blue wasn't hitting the background, so we really get that nice color separation, which I think we did a pretty good job of. And then the last thing here is I have this slash of hard light. And again, I'm using a 750 Leica to do this. And this was kind of a last minute decision before we started rolling, just because I felt like the scene was missing something. And I think this pop of hard, this ray of hard light just really added a nice texture to the scene. And especially for something like this, where a music video where you can kind of do whatever you want. It's this is the time to kind of be experimental and try new things. And I think this light here really added some nice texture to this scene. Okay, for this last one, this is a still from that previous spec commercial that I was talking about. This isn't really a lighting setup, but I think it was just worth talking about. So as you can see here, he's riding his motorcycle and the sun is beaming through the trees. And we're getting this nice outline on his helmet and his bike, but we're also getting a pretty big flare. And in the actual shot, I'll play it here, you can see that it flares the lens. It flares the lens a lot. And a lot of time we'll use eyebrows or mats to get rid of flares, but your job as the cinematographer is really to try to create a mood. And personally, I liked these flares, and I thought that it kind of enhancified the dreamy look that we were going for this entire project. Because as you can see here, there's a lot of blooming happening, because this whole project I was using a Glimmerglass 1, which just creates a lot of halation. And I thought the flares really added to that look, so I decided not to throw in an eyebrow or a matte or anything to really sell that look. And I think it turned out pretty nice.
So that's it for this video. I thought it'd be fun to look at some old projects and break them down, and I hope you found something useful from this that you can use for your next project. If you like this kind of stuff, like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.